The Sprouse Twins became multimillionaires as teenagers, but they have a lot of issues with the company that made them rich, and because of that, they've come out trashing Disney. And Dylan and Cole Sprouse were born in Italy in 1992 after their parents met while working in a school in Italy where they were trying to teach Italian people how to speak English. The Sprouse marriage wasn't long-lived, where the parents split up just 6 months after Dylan and Cole were born and got divorced when they were 2 years old officially. When they moved back to the United States, Dylan and Cole's mom Melanie wasn't making enough money teaching Italian, so because of that, her mother had the idea to put the twins into child acting. Hiring child actors is very difficult due to labor laws where children under the age of 2 years old are only allowed to legally work for 4 hours a day. That makes hiring twins for child acting ideal because now they can have 8 hours of labor a day instead of 4, and at the same time, if one kid's having a tantrum or sick, they have an extra one just standing there. While 95% of child actors will never land any work, the Sprouse Twins are identical twins, which were 1 in 250, and because of that, they were able to land work much quicker. But because of that, when the Sprouse Twins were just 8 months old, they got cast in the show Graced Under Fire, which ended up being a huge hit, going for 5 seasons and 112 episodes. Because of that, the Sprouse Twins were able to land their first movie when they were 6 years old, doing the movie Big Daddy with Adam Sandler, which was a huge hit, making $235 million on a budget of $34 million. And the work kept on coming in, where they'd landed other TV shows and movies, with one of their biggest parts being That 70s Show, where even though it wasn't that big of a role, it was the first time the public saw them as twins, not just one person. The Sprouse Twins were 9 years old. They had to deal with a big issue, and that's that their mom Melanie spent every single cent they made on herself. And the way it works under the Coogan law for child actors is parents only have to save 15% of the money their kids are making, and they can spend the other 85% on themselves. The reason that law was put into place was because of Jackie Coogan, who was the biggest child actor in the 1920s and made anywhere from $3 to $4 million, which would be $60 to $90 million today. His mom and stepdad ended up spending all of his money on him, so he was broke when he turned 18 years old and spent his later life playing Uncle Fester on The Addams Family. But sadly, nobody ever tracks this for the child actors, so people like Jeanette McCurdy, Gary Coleman, and Aaron Carter actually turned 18 and found out they were broke with their parents spending all their money. And that sadly happened for the Sprouse Twins, where their mom never put in place a Coogan account, and even though their dad thought there was going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars saved for them from Grace Under Fire and Big Daddy, there was absolutely nothing there. But because the Sprouse Twins' mom didn't set up a Coogan account, breaking the law, and also spent all of her kids' money, she ended up losing custody of her kids when she was 10 years old, and the dad took over from there. Which, even though that was sad, it was definitely the right move, because 2 years later, the Sprouse Twins were offered a chance by Disney to do Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, with the first salary being $20,000 per episode. The reason Disney wanted to do Sweet Life of Zack and Cody was it was actually a rip-off to Drake and Josh, which came out a year earlier, with the idea of having two brothers united, with one being the cool one and the other one being the nerdy one. The formula worked, with Sweet Life of Zack and Cody being an instant hit, getting 4 million viewers on the pilot, which was one of the most viewed pilots in the history of Disney Channel. Doing Sweet Life of Zack and Cody wasn't particularly easy dealing with Disney, where Dylan and Cole Sprouse were given strict orders by Disney to always look exactly identical. And that's actually really difficult to do for identical twins, because even though they have the same DNA, they don't get equal nutrients from placenta, so because of that, when they're born, one will on average weigh 18% more than the other. That actually goes into childhood and teen life as well, where on average one of the twins will weigh about 15 to 20 pounds more than the others. In this case, it was actually Dylan Sprouse. Because of this, when Dylan Sprouse was only 13 years old, he got screamed at by one of the producers very loudly in front of everyone, saying he was gaining too much weight and they were going to put him on a strict diet and workout routine. Because of that, Kim Rhodes, who played their mom on Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, intervened, where she began screaming at the producers, saying they can't call a 13-year-old fat. Then, very strangely, a few months later, the producers wrote in a joke making fun of Kim Rhodes' weight because she was pregnant at the time and they wanted Dylan Sprouse to call her fat in the show. Dylan Sprouse actually yelled at the Disney producers, saying the joke wasn't funny and was highly disrespectful, and he thought the only reason they were trying to do it was because Kim Rhodes stood up for him. Because of that, Kim Rhodes wasn't invited back for the show Sweet Life on Deck to be part of the main cast, where she only did 4 episodes, and she said the reason for that was Disney didn't like her acting as a sheriff for the kids. Where things enter an entirely different league of bad for Sweet Life of Zack and Cody was during the second season, Brian Peck, who is a convicted pedophile, was hired to work on the show by Disney. And Brian Peck was a dialogue coach hired to work with child actors in the 1990s, with one of his early projects being working with Leonardo DiCaprio. In the mid-2000s, Brian Peck was brought to court for assaulting Drake Bell on numerous occasions, and even though Drake Bell's name was never mentioned, every studio was aware of it. Still, even though Disney was completely aware of what Brian Peck did, because he worked on the show Drake and Josh as a dialogue coach, they ended up hiring him for Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. There was thankfully never any incidents reported by the Sprouse Twins against Brian Peck or any other actors on Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, but it was still a massive danger that Disney put everyone through. Still, the Sprouse Twins did end up getting very wealthy off Disney, where they were paid $20,000 an episode for 158 episodes of both Zack and Cody and also Sweet Life on Deck, and because of that, they made just under $3.2 million. When Sweet Life on Deck ended, the ratings were actually still really good, where they got 7.6 million viewers in the final episode. Because of this, Disney wanted to do a third Sweet Life show, with the plan being for them to go back to Boston, film there, and also at the same time have Dylan and Cole Sprouse's characters go to college. The problem was neither Dylan or Cole Sprouse were into that idea, because they were 19 at the time and they didn't feel like they wanted to be playing these kid-friendly characters again. They proposed 2 ideas to Disney, with the first being a Miami-centric show where they're working at a Tipton hotel based there and they're actually helping train another kid who would be the main character and they'd be supporting roles. They also had the idea to just do a sitcom called Sweet Life on ABC that would be catered for teenagers and adults and not be kid-friendly. They told Disney for either idea they would want a salary of $100,000 per episode each, they'd want to be producers to have more creative control, and they'd also want Kim Rhodes to come back as recurring or main character. And Disney was actually willing to give them the $100,000 per episode salary, but they also at the same time didn't want to give them producer credits or agree to bringing Kim Rhodes back, so they never ended up happening, and the Sprouse Twins are still to this day pissed off at Disney. And with that, I'm Charles Perrault. Please subscribe to learn something.